Ancient stones hold secrets their builders never wrote down. These mysterious megaliths, scattered across the world, are the only voices of cultures with no written record. By the end of this journey, you will see human history in a completely new light. We will investigate how hunter-gatherers built a temple complex before farming began, and why a civilization would carve giant heads, then vanish without a trace. What does it say about us that we have always tried to speak to the future in a language of stone? The ground beneath a Turkish shepherd's feet told a story he could not yet read. In the 1990s, on a windswept hill called Göbekli Tepe, researchers uncovered something that should not have existed. They found immense, circular enclosures built from colossal limestone pillars, each one carved and erected over 11,000 years ago. To put that in perspective, this site is more than 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It was constructed not by a grand empire or even a farming village, but by communities of hunter-gatherers, people who supposedly lived hand-to-mouth, following herds of animals. Yet here they were, moving stones weighing over 20 tons, shaping them into towering T-shaped forms, and decorating them with breathtaking reliefs of foxes, snakes, scorpions, and birds. This was not a settlement. There are no signs of permanent homes, no evidence of farming or domesticated animals. Göbekli Tepe, which translates to Potbelly Hill, was something else entirely. The leading archaeologist who excavated it, Klaus Schmidt, called it a cathedral on a hill. He believed it was a purely ritual space, a place of pilgrimage where scattered groups would gather at certain times for ceremonies we can only try to understand. The implications are staggering. For generations, the story of human progress was linear. First, we learned to farm and settle down. Agriculture gave us surplus food, which allowed for specialization, which led to complex society, hierarchy, and finally, monumental architecture like temples. Göbekli Tepe flips that script entirely. It suggests that the human impulse to come together for something greater, to build something permanent for a shared spiritual purpose, might have been the spark that started it all. The need to create a sacred space may have been what forced us to organize, to plan, to feed large groups of workers, and perhaps to begin cultivating the wild grasses that grew around this very hill. The engineering itself is a quiet marvel. These prehistoric builders, using simple flint tools, quarried these pillars from nearby bedrock, transported them up the hill, and set them into precisely carved sockets in the ground. They fit together with a stability that has endured for more than 300 generations, so we are left with a profound question, whispered by these silent, animal-covered stones. Did civilization begin not with a granary but with a temple? Did we build gods before we built homes? The silent stones of Göbekli Tepe ask us to reconsider the dawn of civilization. But across Europe, another field of stone poses a different kind of riddle. In the gentle countryside of Brittany, France, you can walk for kilometers through a landscape that feels quietly, profoundly unnatural. Here, in the town of Carnac, more than 3,000 prehistoric standing stones march across the earth in precise, parallel rows. They are known as menhirs, and they were placed here by a Neolithic culture over a span of more than 1,000 years, beginning around 4,500 years before our Common Era. To stand among them is to feel a deep sense of order imposed upon chaos. The stones are not randomly scattered. They are arranged in long, straight alignments, some rows containing hundreds of individual stones that gradually decrease in height, creating a powerful visual rhythm that draws your eye toward the horizon. It is a spectacle of scale that beggars belief, a petrified army frozen in time. The immediate, overwhelming question is why? Why would a people using only stone tools and immense communal effort quarry, transport, and erect this many granite monoliths? What vision was so powerful it demanded this expression? Without a single word left behind by the builders, we are left to decode the silent geometry of their ambition. One leading theory looks to the sky. Certain alignments at Carnac correspond with the rising and setting of the sun at the solstices, suggesting the site may have functioned as a colossal astronomical calendar. It could have been a sacred landscape for marking the passage of seasons, for ceremonies tied to the cycles of life, death, and rebirth that governed an agricultural society. Others see it as a grand processional path, a ritual corridor where communities would walk in ceremony between the rows, perhaps culminating at a tomb or a special gathering point. There is also the possibility it served as a territorial marker, a statement of identity and control over the land so vast it could not be ignored. Local folklore, of course, offers a more colorful explanation. For centuries, a tale was told that these were the soldiers of a Roman legion turned to stone by the wizard Merlin. It is a charming story, but modern archaeology seeks answers in the earth and the alignment of the stars. The sheer, undeniable fact of the Carnac stones is the labor. Each one represents a triumph of logistics and social organization. To move a multi-ton block of granite from a quarry, sometimes over several miles, and to erect it with exacting precision, required a society that could coordinate hundreds of people, feed them, and unite them under a shared purpose that spanned generations. This was not the work of a scattered village. It speaks to a culture with a unified vision, one capable of planning on a scale that feels almost modern. So while we may never know the specific prayers spoken here or the names of the leaders who commanded this work, the Carnac alignments stand as a permanent testament to a profound human truth. When we share a belief, when we are united by a common vision, we can reshape the very world around us, leaving a message in stone for the ages to ponder. The quiet geometry of Carnac speaks of a unified vision, but on the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, a different story is carved in stone. Rapa Nui, known to the world as Easter Island, is home to the Moai. These brooding, monolithic figures stand with their backs to the sea, their elongated features and solemn expressions gazing eternally inland. Carved from compressed volcanic ash between the years 1250 and 1500 of our common era by the Rapa Nui people, they are not merely heads as often pictured. They are full-body statues, many of which have become buried over the centuries, leaving only their imposing heads visible. Each Moai was a towering representation of a revered ancestor, believed to hold spiritual power or mana, to watch over and protect a specific clan territory. Their blank eyes, originally inlaid with coral and obsidian, would have once stared with a lifelike presence across the landscape. The sheer scale of the endeavor is breathtaking. The largest Moai ever erected, named Paro, stands over 30 feet tall and weighs an estimated 82 tons. How did a society without metal tools, without wheels, and without draft animals achieve this? The quarry at the volcanic crater of Nuraghe is a haunting gallery of works in progress, with nearly 400 statues in various stages of completion, as if the workers simply walked away one day. From this quarry, completed Moai were somehow transported up to 11 miles across rugged terrain to coastal ceremonial platforms called ahu. For decades, the dominant theory involved log rollers and large teams slowly pulling the giants on a wooden track. But more recent experimental archaeology, informed by local oral tradition, suggests a method that feels almost alive. Researchers have demonstrated that with 3 teams of ropes and a careful rocking motion, a Moai could be made to walk, swaying from side to side as it was guided forward. This method, while still requiring immense coordination, would use far less timber than building a continuous road of logs. This leads to the island's most poignant layer of mystery, its ecological story. When Polynesian settlers first arrived, the island was covered in a lush palm forest. over centuries, as the population grew and the statue culture intensified, that forest disappeared. Was the wood used for rollers, sledges, or to erect the statues? Did the clearing of land for agriculture play a role? The exact cause is debated, but the correlation is stark. The story of the Moai, therefore, is not just one of incredible engineering, but also a profound narrative about ambition and resources. It is a reminder that even the most sacred and awe-inspiring projects exist within the delicate balance of an environment. The silent Moai now stand as guardians of a lost landscape, their creation a testament to human devotion, and their context a timeless lesson in stewardship. From the solemn ancestral guardians of Rapa Nui, we travel to the lush river deltas of Central America, where an entirely different kind of stone mystery lies half buried in the earth. In the Diquis Delta of Costa Rica, workers clearing land for banana plantations in the 1930s uncovered objects that seemed impossible. Scattered across the landscape were hundreds of stone spheres known locally as Los Bolas. These are not rough, natural boulders. They are sculptures of breathtaking precision, crafted by a pre-Columbian culture between the years 300 and 1500 of our Common Era. Ranging in size from that of a grapefruit to colossal orbs over 2 meters in diameter and weighing more than 16 tons, their geometry is what stops you cold. Many of these spheres are nearly perfect. Their surfaces are smooth to a remarkable degree, and their spherical shape exhibits an accuracy that rivals what could be achieved with modern tools. They were shaped from tough, igneous rock like gabbro, as well as limestone and sandstone, a feat that required not just strength but a profound, patient understanding of material. The method is believed to have involved a multi-step process. First, large boulders were roughly shaped by pecking at them with other stones. Then, through relentless grinding with sand and water, the form was refined. Some researchers suggest the final smoothing may have involved controlled heating and rapid cooling to fracture away the last imperfections. This was not a quick task. Creating a single large sphere could have taken a team of individuals years of dedicated work. But for what purpose? Why would a society invest such staggering effort into creating perfect forms of stone? The original context is largely lost. Many of the spheres were moved by the very plantation machinery that discovered them, ripped from their ancient arrangements and rolled to the sides of fields or onto the properties of local officials as curiosities. This displacement destroyed the archaeological record of their placement, turning a complex code into a scattered puzzle. Some theories propose they were astronomical markers, arranged in patterns that mirrored important constellations or the paths of celestial bodies. Others see them as symbols of power and status, perhaps marking the territories of chieftains or the locations of important ceremonial sites. Their perfect form itself might hold the key, representing celestial bodies like the sun or moon, or concepts of perfection and cosmic harmony. A few were found arranged in straight lines or geometric patterns, pointing toward significant landmarks like the tops of hills or the mouths of rivers. This suggests they could have functioned as a kind of silent stone map or a ritual landscape for processions. Unlike the towering Moai or the aligned menhirs of Carnac, the spheres possess a quiet, self-contained mystery. They do not depict a face or an animal. They carry no carvings. Their message is their form alone, a testament to a culture that valued precision, balance, and geometric truth enough to literally carve it into the landscape. In their silent perfection, they ask us a subtle but profound question. Is there a universal human attraction to the sphere, to the completeness it represents, that transcends language and culture? These stones are a pure expression of an idea, a shape made permanent, waiting for us to understand the thought behind it. The perfect geometry of Costa Rica's spheres speaks to a universal human ideal, but in southeastern Africa, a city of stone tells a story of power, wealth, and a reclaimed legacy. Rising from the savannah are the majestic ruins of Great Zimbabwe, a capital built entirely without mortar by the Shona people between the 11th and 15th centuries. Its name, derived from the Shona phrase Dizimba means houses of stone, and what houses they were. The most breathtaking structure is the Great Enclosure, a vast, elliptical space surrounded by a curved wall that stands over 30 feet tall in places. This wall, built using a meticulous dry stone technique where granite blocks are carefully shaped to fit together, is a masterpiece of engineering and artistry. Its most iconic feature is the conical tower, a solid, 30-foot-tall stone structure that stands within the enclosure like a silent sentinel. The smooth, flowing curves of the architecture are unique in the region, a signature style that radiates both strength and grace. For centuries, European colonists who encountered these ruins refused to believe they could be of African origin. They spun fantastical tales, attributing the city to biblical kings like Solomon or the Queen of Sheba, or to distant Phoenician traders. This was more than just a mistake. It was a deliberate denial, an attempt to strip a continent of its sophisticated history. Modern archaeology, however, has resoundingly affirmed what Shona oral tradition always held. Great Zimbabwe was the heart of a powerful kingdom, a center of trade, politics, and spirituality that commanded a network stretching from the interior to the Swahili coast on the Indian Ocean. The city's wealth was built on gold and ivory, commodities that flowed through its markets and connected it to a wider world. But what was the purpose of its grandest structures? The conical tower, solid and impenetrable, has sparked endless debate. Some researchers suggest it symbolized a grain silo, a representation of the kingdom's prosperity and food security. Others see it as a phallic symbol of royal authority, or the focal point of sacred rituals. The great enclosure itself, with its high walls and narrow, labyrinthine passageways, is thought to have been a royal residence, a private domain for the king and his family, separate from the bustling valley below where thousands of citizens lived. Walking through these ruins today, you are walking through a narrative written in stone, a narrative that forcefully challenges old, prejudiced views of history. Great Zimbabwe stands as undeniable proof of complex state-level society in southern Africa, a society that organized labor, mastered architecture, and engaged in international trade, all while preserving its history through the living library of oral tradition, not inscribed text. The silent, soaring walls do more than just mark an ancient city. They mark a reclamation, a testament to an African achievement that the stones themselves never forgot. While Great Zimbabwe's walls reclaimed a narrative, another civilization's legacy was nearly swallowed by the jungle. Deep in the humid lowlands of what is now Mexico, the Olmec people laid the foundation for all later Mesoamerican cultures, earning them the title of the Mother Culture. And their most enduring signature is not a temple or a tomb, but a face. 17 colossal stone heads, carved from single blocks of volcanic basalt, stare out from the undergrowth with an expression of immutable calm. These are not generic idols. Each one is a distinct portrait, a helmeted individual with unique facial features, from broad, flat noses and full lips to expressions ranging from serene confidence to a subtle, knowing frown. They were created between 1500 and 400 years before our common era, and they are monumental in every sense. The largest of them stands over 3 meters tall and weighs an estimated 20 tons, the weight of 2 full-grown elephants. To stand before one is to feel the weight of a personality rendered in stone, a ruler whose name is lost but whose presence is forever stamped upon the land. The immediate, practical mystery is one of sheer force. The basalt for these heads came from the Tuxtla Mountains, quarried from the slopes of ancient volcanoes. From there, the Olmecs, who had no knowledge of the wheel and no draft animals like horses or oxen, had to transport these multi-ton blocks over 150 kilometers of swampy, river-cut terrain to their ceremonial centers like San Lorenzo and La Venta. How did they do it? The prevailing theory is a feat of communal logistics and understanding of the environment. Researchers believe the massive stones were likely moved on great wooden sledges or rollers, hauled by hundreds of people along cleared paths. But the most ingenious part may have involved the region's vast network of rivers. It is thought that the Olmecs used rafts to float the stones during seasonal floods, turning waterways into ancient highways. This operation speaks of a society with remarkable organizational power, capable of mobilizing and sustaining large workforces for a project with no immediate practical return. It was an investment in legacy, but what did these heads mean? With no deciphered Olmec writing to guide us, their silent gaze is open to interpretation. The distinctive protective helmets have led many scholars to connect them to the ritual ball game, a sacred sport with profound spiritual and political meaning that echoes throughout later Mesoamerican history. Perhaps these are portraits of mighty ball players or kings who derived their authority from the game. Most compelling is the consensus that they represent specific, powerful rulers. Each unique face is a declaration of individual authority, a statement that a single person could command the resources and labor of an entire people to immortalize their likeness. They may represent deified ancestors watching over their descendants. In their stoic, weathered features, we see the early crystallization of ideas that would become central to the Maya and the Aztec, the concept of the divine king, the ruler as the axis between the human and spiritual worlds. The Olmec heads are thus a profound beginning. They are the first chapter in a long, complex story of American civilization, written not on parchment, but in the enduring language of stone and earth. They remind us that the drive to be remembered, to project power and identity into the future, is a human impulse as old as society itself. The stoic faces of the Olmec rulers project an earthly authority, but on a remote Scottish island, stones were raised to converse with the sky. On the Isle of Lewis, where the Atlantic wind carves the land and the light holds a peculiar silvery quality, the Callanish stones stand in solemn congregation. Erected around 4,900 years ago, this is not a simple circle. It forms a graceful cruciform pattern, a central ring of 13 towering stones from which arms of monoliths stretch to the north, south, east, and west like a great stone cross laid upon the earth. At its very heart lies a chambered tomb, a quiet reminder that this place was intimately connected with the cycles of life and what lies beyond. To walk among them is to feel a profound intentionality, a design that harmonizes with the rolling peatland and the vast domed sky above. The genius of Callanish is not solar but lunar. While many ancient sites track the sun's journey, the alignments here are tuned to a far more subtle and patient rhythm, the complex 18.6-year cycle of the moon. Every generation and a half, when the moon reaches its most extreme southern rising point, it appears to skim the distant hills, and from the center of the circle, it seems to glide perfectly along the avenue of stones to the south, as if rolling down a celestial corridor. This is not a chance alignment. It represents generations of meticulous observation, a deep, accumulated knowledge of the heavens passed down without a single written word. Local folklore, born millennia later, offers a different poetry. It tells of giants who once walked the island, who were turned to stone for refusing to embrace Christianity. It is a story that speaks to the awe these stones inspired in later peoples, who could not fathom their origin and so attributed them to mythical beings. Archaeology, however, reveals the true architects, the Neolithic farmers who lived here. For them, this was likely a sacred stage where the earthly and celestial worlds met. The tomb at the center suggests veneration of ancestors, while the lunar alignments connected those ancestors to the eternal rhythms of the cosmos. The moon, with its cycles of waxing and waning, was a powerful symbol of rebirth, renewal, and the passage of time. To mark its most dramatic swing across the sky was to assert a place within that grand, repeating story. The power of Callanish lies in this synthesis, the way stone, landscape, and sky were woven into a single, cohesive cosmology. It was a place where a community could gather to reaffirm their beliefs, to mourn their losses, and to witness the moon perform its slow, majestic dance, a dance they had learned to predict and honor. In the silent, wind-swept alignment of these stones, we see not just astronomical skill, but a yearning to find meaning and order in the vast, beautiful mystery of the night. While the stones of Callanish charted the moon on a sun-drenched island in the Mediterranean, another culture built not for the sky but for the earth itself. On the Maltese island of Gozo, the Ġgantija with Ġgantija temples rise from the landscape like the bones of the world. Their name means giant's tower, and local legend tells of a giantess who built them single-handedly, carrying the massive stones while cradling her child. The truth, though no less monumental, is a human story. These two sprawling temples, constructed around 3,600 years before our Common Era, are among the oldest free-standing stone structures on the planet, predating even the Great Pyramids of Giza. To stand within their curving walls is to feel a sense of enclosure and purpose that is almost palpable. The architecture is a masterpiece of its age. The builders used enormous blocks of coralline limestone, some weighing many tons, to create a series of interconnected, oval-shaped chambers. The walls are built using a technique called corbelling, where each successive layer of stone projects slightly inward, creating a towering, inward-sloping facade that once likely supported a roof. The scale is staggering, and the precision with which these irregular, megalithic blocks were fitted together, all without any metal tools, is a quiet engineering marvel. The stone was quarried locally, but moving these giants from the quarry to the temple site, and then hoisting them into position, required not just muscle, but an advanced understanding of leverage, balance, and communal effort. What drove such a coordinated, generational project? The artifacts found within offer a compelling clue. Archaeologists have discovered numerous clay figurines depicting voluptuous female forms, along with stone altars and hearths. This has led to the widely held theory that Ġgantija was a central sanctuary for a fertility cult, a place where a peaceful, Neolithic society appealed to the forces of growth, life, and the continuity of their community. The temples themselves, with their curving, womb-like chambers and central passages, seem to mirror this focus. Here, rituals likely celebrated the cycles of agriculture, human birth, and the natural world. This was a society that invested its greatest collective effort not into fortifications for war, but into a sacred space for nurturing life. And this makes the final chapter of their story all the more haunting. After flourishing for over 1,000 years, this temple-building culture on Malta and Gozo vanished. The islands appear to have been abandoned for centuries. We find no evidence of invasion, no layers of ash from a cataclysm. The leading theories point to a slower, more insidious challenge, perhaps a severe shift in climate that led to drought and failed harvests, or the overuse of the fragile island environment. It is a poignant reminder that even the most spiritually advanced and peaceful societies exist at the mercy of their ecosystem. The silent, soaring walls of Ġgantija, then, stand as a dual testament to the incredible heights of human collaboration and belief, and to the fragile balance that sustains any civilization. They were built to honor life, and their abandonment speaks quietly of its profound vulnerability. Beneath the waves of the Western Pacific lies a mystery that blurs the line between earth and art. Off the coast of Yonaguni Island, Japan, the seafloor holds a formation that looks utterly out of place. discovered by a diver in the 1980s, the Yonaguni monument is a massive, tiered structure rising from the ocean depths. Its sheer faces drop down in what appear to be perfect steps and terraces, meeting at sharp 90-degree angles. From above, it resembles a sunken pyramid or a grand, ceremonial ziggurat, a silent sentinel in the blue twilight. The rock itself is sandstone, a material known to fracture along straight lines, and the powerful currents here are capable of sculpting the seabed. This is the core of a fierce and fascinating debate. Are we looking at a breathtaking natural formation, a geological coincidence that tricks our pattern-seeking minds, or are we witnessing the ruins of a megalithic site, built by human hands when this spot was dry land over 10,000 years ago? Proponents of the artificial theory guide you on a virtual tour, pointing to features that feel deliberately crafted. They highlight what look like two round holes carved into a rock face, perfectly spaced as if to hold timber posts. They show a pair of massive, rectangular blocks lying side by side, nicknamed the twin megaliths, whose precise parallelism seems unlikely to be random. They trace narrow, straight channels that cut across platforms, resembling drainage or irrigation ducts. If these features are human-made, the implications are staggering. 10 millennia ago, the world was emerging from the last ice age. Sea levels were far lower, and the area around Yonaguni would have been a coastal plain, not an island. Could a pre-literate culture, perhaps the German people known for their sophisticated pottery and settled communities, have engineered such a monument? Some researchers even speculate about a lost civilization, a Pacific counterpart to legendary lands like Mu or Atlantis, swallowed by the rising seas. Skeptical geologists, however, offer a compelling counter-narrative. They demonstrate how the sandstone in this region naturally splits along horizontal and vertical planes due to tectonic stresses. The relentless scouring of sand carried by tidal currents can undercut these layers, creating the dramatic, stepped profiles we see. The so-called post holes could be places where softer rock eroded away, and the parallel blocks might simply be pieces of a single layer that cracked and separated. The monument, they argue, is a masterpiece of natural forces, a textbook example of what geologists call sheet jointing. This is where the mystery truly captivates. It sits at the precise intersection of geology and archaeology, forcing us to hone our detective skills. How do we reliably distinguish human intention from the magnificent artistry of natural processes? The Yonaguni monument challenges us to look deeper, to ask not just what we are seeing, but how we see. It is a riddle written in stone and water, a test of our ability to listen to the quiet, ambiguous whispers of the deep past. Far from the ocean's ambiguous monument, on the sun-baked plains of Portugal, a stone circle holds a more terrestrial certainty. The Almendres Cromlech rests in the Alentejo region, a sprawling arrangement of 95 standing stones scattered across a gentle slope among ancient cork oaks. This is not a single dramatic ring, but a complex built in phases over an astonishing 3,000 years, beginning around 6,000 years before our Common Era. To put that timeline into perspective, the oldest stones here were raised while mammoths still walked parts of the earth, and the final stones were placed a full millennium before work began on Stonehenge. This longevity is its first profound clue. This was not a project with a single blueprint, but a living, evolving sacred space that grew alongside the community it served. The stones themselves, weathered to a smooth, gray patina, are arranged in two main groupings, one oval and one circular, as if the site expanded or its purpose shifted over the generations. Some of the monoliths bear faint but deliberate carvings, shallow cup marks, dimples, and wavy lines etched into their surfaces. These are not random weathering patterns, but symbolic gestures whose specific meanings are lost to us. Yet their presence transforms these stones from mere markers into pages of a tactile, three-dimensional text. The most compelling aspect of Almendres is its relationship with the sky. Researchers have mapped alignments within the complex that correspond precisely with the rising sun at the solstices and equinoxes. This was a precision calendar carved into the landscape, a communal clock and compass that told a farming people exactly when to plant, when to harvest, and when to celebrate the turning of the year. Imagine the gatherings here at dawn on the longest day, as the sun broke the horizon in perfect alignment with a specific pair of stones, bathing the field in golden light. It would have been a moment of shared awe, a reaffirmation of cosmic order and community purpose. The site's remote, beautiful setting among the cork oaks, away from any obvious settlement, reinforces its role as a special place of congregation. For dozens of generations, people likely traveled here from scattered homesteads. They came for ceremonies tied to the earth's fertility, to honor ancestors whose spirits might dwell in the stones, or simply to reinforce the social bonds that held their world together. The Almendres Cromlech, therefore, is more than a monument, it is a chronicle. Its stones, erected across 3 millennia, tell a silent story of continuity. They speak of a culture so deeply rooted in its landscape and its celestial observations that its central sacred space could evolve slowly, organically, for 150 generations without losing its essential meaning. In its quiet, oak-shaded presence, we see not a single dramatic event, but the steady, enduring heartbeat of a community in tune with its world. The enduring stones of Almendres chronicle a community's long conversation with the sky, but in the 20th century, a new kind of megalith appeared with a message for the future. In 1980, in a quiet field in Elbert County, Georgia, a set of pale granite slabs was unveiled to the world. Known as the Georgia Guidestones, they stood nearly 20 feet tall, arranged with astronomical precision to track the sun and stars. Their construction was funded by a man using the pseudonym R.C. Christian, who claimed to represent a small group of Americans who wished to leave a message for future generations. His true identity was never publicly revealed, transforming this modern monument into an instant enigma. Here was a megalith built not by an ancient, pre-literate culture, but by contemporary individuals who deliberately chose the language of stone and secrecy. The stones themselves were inscribed with 10 guidelines or principles for an envisioned age of reason. These messages were carved in 8 of the world's major languages, from English and Spanish to Hindi and Swahili, and they covered topics like maintaining humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, guiding reproduction wisely, and avoiding petty laws and useless officials. A capstone bore shorter inscriptions in 4 ancient scripts, including Babylonian cuneiform and Classical Greek. The monument functioned as a calendar, with holes and slots aligned to mark the solstices and equinoxes, and a small aperture in the central stone that pointed to the North Star. It was, in essence, a modern attempt to create a timeless guidebook, a set of instructions carved in granite meant to survive some future calamity and advise a rebuilt civilization. Yet without a clear author or a declared philosophy, the stones became a blank screen for interpretation. For decades, they were the subject of intense speculation and conspiracy theories, seen by some as a noble humanist project and by others as a sinister blueprint for global control. This very ambiguity made them a perfect, poignant echo of the ancient sites we have explored. The creators left a clear message, but the context of who they were and why they chose these specific tenets vanished with their anonymity, leaving only the cryptic stones to speak. The Guidestones' modern story reached a sudden, violent conclusion in 2022 when they were severely damaged in an explosion and later fully dismantled for safety reasons. Their physical existence was brief, but their symbolic weight is heavy. They prove that the human impulse to erect lasting monuments and speak to the future in a coded, permanent language did not end with the Neolithic era. It is an urge that persists, driven by the same mix of idealism, warning, and the desire for legacy. Future archaeologists sifting through the rubble of our age may one day study the fragments of the Georgia Guidestones with the same puzzled curiosity we apply to the menhirs of Carnac or the spheres of Costa Rica. They will ask who R.C. Christian was, what crisis he feared, and what kind of world he hoped his stones would help build. In that way, this modern megalith completes a circle, reminding us that we are still part of this ancient, ongoing story, still trying to carve our hopes and fears into something we hope will outlast us. The Georgia Guidestones proved our modern urge to carve messages for the future, but in the humid heart of Indonesia, an older mystery lies scattered and forgotten. On the island of Sulawesi, the Boda Valley cradles a landscape of silent stone sentinels. Here, nestled among dense jungle and emerald rice paddies, stand dozens of ancient megaliths known locally as Watu. These are not the intricate, towering figures of Easter Island or the geometric precision of European circles. Their power lies in their stark, haunting simplicity. Carved from single blocks of stone by a culture that left no name and no written history, perhaps between 1,000 and 5,000 years ago, they possess an almost primal presence. The statues are humanoid with rounded heads, broad shoulders, and rudimentary limbs. Many have no facial features at all, just a smooth, blank expanse where a face should be, while others bear only the faintest suggestion of eyes and a mouth. This deliberate anonymity makes them profoundly enigmatic. They do not seem to be portraits of individuals, but rather representations of an idea, of a presence. Alongside these silent figures are other, equally puzzling artifacts, massive stone jars, some standing nearly 2 meters tall. These megalithic jars, some even fitted with heavy stone lids, bear an uncanny and likely coincidental resemblance to the famous plain of jars in Laos, thousands of kilometers away. Were they used for storage, for burial practices, or as ritual containers for offerings? Without extensive archaeological excavation, their purpose remains a field of speculation. The local communities who have lived among these stones for generations have woven their own explanations into folklore. One persistent tale says the Watu are criminals or wrongdoers who are turned to stone by a powerful force, a moral lesson made permanent. Another speaks of them as supernatural beings frozen in time. These stories are not just fanciful myths, they are a form of interpretation, an attempt by later peoples to make sense of a legacy that arrived without a manual. For researchers, the stones pose quiet, practical questions. Were they territorial markers for ancient clans, defining the landscape with a permanent signature? Could the jars have been part of memorial practices, holding the remains or possessions of important individuals? Their isolation is a key part of the puzzle. The Boda Valley megaliths represent a distinct and seemingly isolated tradition, flourishing in the lush interior of the archipelago, separate from the influences of later Hindu or Buddhist kingdoms that would dominate coastal areas. This isolation makes them a pure expression of a local worldview, a glimpse into a cultural impulse that chose to express its beliefs, its memory, and its identity not on perishable wood or cloth, but in the enduring, patient language of stone. Walking among them today, with the jungle pressing in and the mist clinging to the valleys, you feel you are in a gallery of questions. Each featureless face seems to be listening rather than speaking, waiting for us to understand not who they are, but what they meant to the people who labored to bring them here. They remind us that the need to mark a place, to make a statement that says we were here and this place mattered, is a human universal, as alive in the secluded valleys of Sulawesi as it was on the open plains of Carnac. From the secluded stone faces of Sulawesi, we journey to the misty highlands of Laos, where the landscape itself is filled with vessels. The Plain of Jars is exactly what its name promises, a series of rolling meadows and forested hills where thousands of gigantic stone jars lie scattered, as if left behind by giants after a forgotten feast. Carved from sandstone and granite, these massive urns stand alone or in clusters of hundreds, some reaching over 3 meters tall and weighing several tons. Their origins stretch back to the Iron Age, between 500 years before our Common Era and 500 years after, yet their purpose remains one of Southeast Asia's most enduring archaeological puzzles. The sheer scale of the operation is the first clue. These are not simple parts, quarrying the stone, shaping these perfect cylindrical or bulbous forms, and transporting them across difficult terrain to dozens of separate jar fields required a coordinated society with a powerful, shared motivation. But what was that motivation? The most prominent theory, supported by archaeological finds, points to memorial practices. Excavations around some jars have uncovered human bone fragments, ceramic grave goods, and glass beads. This suggests the jars may have been used as a form of sarcophagus, holding the remains of individuals, or perhaps for a practice known as excarnation, where bodies were placed inside to decompose before the bones were collected for a final resting place. In this light, the jar fields become a vast, silent memorial landscape, a community's way of honoring those who passed. Yet another compelling idea, drawn from local tradition, offers a completely different vision. Some researchers and regional stories propose the jars were used for fermenting enormous quantities of rice wine, for grand communal feasts that celebrated alliances, victories, or seasonal festivals. This theory paints a picture of vibrant gatherings, of music and ceremony echoing across these hills, with the jars as the central focus of celebration and unity. The truth may encompass both, a place where rituals for the departed and festivals for the living were intertwined. The mystery is deepened by the absence of the makers themselves. No substantial settlements have been found nearby, and no written records from the creators survive. They are believed to have been a Mon Khmer-speaking culture, but their name and the details of their daily life are lost. Each jar field feels abruptly abandoned, a stage set with all its props in place, waiting for actors who never returned. Modern history has added a tragic, dangerous layer to this ancient enigma. During the mid-20th century conflict in the region, the plains were heavily bombed, leaving the area littered with unexploded ordnance. This has made comprehensive archaeological survey painfully slow and perilous, a stark reminder of how recent events can silence our ability to listen to the distant past. So these stone jars sit in their fields under the Laotian sun and rain, holding their secrets close. They are monuments to a dual mystery, the original intention of their makers, and the historical challenges that keep us at a distance. Whether they were vessels for the journey after life or for the rice wine that celebrated life itself, they stand as a profound testament to a culture that invested immense effort into creating communal spaces for what mattered most, binding their people together in memory, in ceremony, or in simple, shared joy. High on a Bolivian ridge, the rock itself becomes the monument. El Fuerte Samepota is not a structure built from stone, but a single, sprawling sandstone outcrop transformed by human hands. Rising from the lush eastern slopes of the Andes, this site is a breathtaking canvas of pre-Hispanic art and intention, carved directly into the living rock over centuries, beginning perhaps around the year 300 of our Common Era. Its creators were likely from the Chane or Mojacoya cultures, peoples who left no written records but whose vision is etched with stunning clarity across an area larger than a football field. To walk across this smoothed, sculpted rock is to walk through a puzzle of purpose. The entire surface is a complex tapestry of shallow carvings. You see zigzagging channels that run in precise parallel lines, deep, rectangular niches cut into the stone, and graceful spirals that seem to flow like water. There are representations of animals, including felines and serpents, and geometric shapes whose meanings are now silent. The most striking feature is a series of long, parallel gutters, often called the Coro del Sacerdote, or the choir of the priest. These channels are not random erosion. They are engineered with a gentle, consistent slope, leading many researchers to believe they were designed to guide a liquid, perhaps water mixed with ceremonial offerings like chicha or corn beer, in a ritual act of flow and dedication. This transforms the rock from a static object into a dynamic participant in ceremony, a monumental altar where the landscape itself performed. But what was the overarching purpose of this immense labor? The site's Spanish name, El Fuerte, or the fort, suggests a defensive stronghold, and its commanding view of the valleys below supports that idea. Yet the sheer amount of artistic and ritual investment points to something far beyond mere military utility. Many scholars believe it was primarily a ceremonial and astronomical center. Specific carvings and alignments on the rock correspond with the rising and setting sun during the solstices and equinoxes, turning the entire outcrop into a giant stone calendar. It may have served as a regional sanctuary, a place where different groups would gather for rituals that tied them to the cosmos and to each other, using the channels and pools for libations that connected the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. Later, the Inca Empire recognized its power, building structures on the terraces below and incorporating it into their own sacred geography. But the earliest, most profound voice here is the one without words, the culture that chose not to build upon the rock, but to reveal meaning from within it. Samepata represents a unique fusion of architecture and nature. The builders did not quarry the stone to move it, they communed with it, listening to its form and using their skill to unlock a sacred landscape that was already present. In doing so, they created a different kind of language, one written not with ink or on tablets, but with sunlight, shadow, and the slow, patient passage of water across stone. Across the vast, wind-swept Mongolian steppe, the horizon is punctuated by silent, slender figures. These are the deer stones, upright granite monoliths that rise from the earth like ancient sentinels, carved by nomadic pastoralists during the late Bronze Age, between 1200 and 600 years before our Common Era. Their name comes from their most striking feature, intricate, stylized carvings of deer that seem to leap and soar across the stone surface. These are not the grounded, grazing animals of the plain. They are elongated, elegant creatures with exaggerated antlers that flow backward over their bodies as if they are flying, or perhaps swimming, through the air itself. This distinctive style gives them an otherworldly, ethereal quality, but the stones tell a more complex story than just deer. They are often divided into sections like a human form. Near the top, you might find a simple circle representing a face, sometimes with earrings carved beside it. Below that, a horizontal band symbolizes a belt from which tools or weapons like knives, bows, or symbolic mirrors are depicted hanging. And covering the rest of the surface in repeating patterns are those magnificent flying deer. These stones were not placed in isolation. They are frequently found standing guard near circular burial mounds known as kirigsurs, vast stone arrangements that mark the final resting places of important individuals. This connection to memorial sites is our strongest clue to their purpose. Researchers believe the deer stones are profound monuments to both the individual and the spirit. The carvings of belts and weapons likely represent the status and identity of the person honored, a permanent record of their earthly role. But the deer, those graceful, airborne beings, point to something beyond. In the shamanic traditions that have deep roots across Siberia and Central Asia, the deer is a powerful psychopomp, an animal spirit that guides souls between worlds. The act of flight or of swimming upward symbolizes a spiritual journey, a transformation from the physical realm to the celestial one. Each stone, then, may be a map for the soul, a sacred diagram intended to aid and protect the departed on their passage to the afterlife. What makes the deer stones so revolutionary in our understanding of megaliths is the culture that created them. These were not settled farmers who could dedicate generations to a single temple complex. They were nomadic herders, people whose lives were defined by movement, following their herds across the endless grassland. Yet they too felt the powerful urge to mark their landscape permanently, to invest immense effort in quarrying, carving, and erecting these heavy stones at specific, meaningful locations. This proves that the megalithic impulse, the drive to create lasting monuments from stone, is not tied to a single way of life. It is a universal human expression, as powerful on the open steppe as it was in the sheltered valleys of Malta or the jungles of Sulawesi. The stones stand as a silent rebuttal to old ideas that monumental architecture requires cities and granaries. They show that profound spiritual concepts, complex social organization, and a desire for legacy can flourish even within a life of constant migration. With no written text to explain them, we listen to the stones through the echoes of later mythology and the enduring shamanic practices of the region. In their soaring deer, we see a nomadic people's vision of transcendence, a beautiful belief that the soul, like the herds they followed, was always meant to journey onward. The nomadic spirit of the deer stones finds a permanent home on another island, one where the landscape bristles with stone. Sardinia is dotted with thousands of Nuraghe, beehive-shaped stone towers that rise from the rugged terrain like the work of industrious giants. Built by the Nuragic civilization beginning around 1800 years before our common era, these structures are the island's signature, a testament to a culture that flourished for over a millennium and left behind no deciphered written word. To see one is to see a fortress of pure geometry, constructed entirely without mortar using the dry stone corbelling technique. Each massive block was carefully shaped and stacked, each layer projecting slightly inward until the walls met in a soaring, conical dome. This was not a simple hut. Many Nuraghe evolved into complex, multi-lobed structures with central towers surrounded by additional bastions and walls, creating labyrinthine compounds that could house families, store supplies, and withstand attack. Their durability is staggering, with many standing largely intact after nearly 4,000 years. But what were they for? The most immediate answer is defense. Their thick walls, narrow entrances, and commanding positions on hilltops suggest they were strongholds, places of refuge for a community during times of conflict. Yet their sheer numbers, over 7,000 across the island, hint at something more. Were they also the fortified homes of local chieftains, symbols of power and status in a society organized into clans? The interiors, often featuring niches and spiral staircases leading to upper chambers, suggest domestic use alongside their martial purpose. Perhaps most intriguing is the possibility of a deeper, symbolic meaning. Their distinctive conical shape, repeated across the island, might have represented a cosmic mountain, a link between the earth and the heavens, turning each tower into a miniature axis of the world. This civilization was far from primitive. Alongside these stone sentinels, the Nuragic people built intricate sacred wells, precisely engineered to tap into underground springs and likely used for water rituals that honored life-giving forces. They were master bronze workers, crafting detailed figurines of warriors, animals, and ships that speak of a society engaged in trade, ritual, and a rich, imaginative life. The Nuraghe, therefore, resist a single, simple explanation. They were likely all of these things at once: dwellings, fortresses, and sacred symbols, their meaning shifting with time and circumstance. They stand as the ultimate expression of a people who chose to write their history not on parchment, but in the very skeleton of their land, creating a forest of stone that continues to guard its secrets with silent, formidable grace. Stretching between the southern tip of India and the northwestern coast of Sri Lanka lies a chain of sandbanks and shoals, visible even from space. This is Adam's Bridge, known in Hindu tradition as Rama's Bridge or Rama Setu. From orbit, it looks like a faint, broken path across the shallow sea, a dotted line connecting two lands. Geologically, it is a natural formation, a chain of limestone shoals created by sedimentation and the steady work of ocean currents over immense stretches of time. Yet for millions of people, it is something far more profound, the physical remnant of a story written in epic verse. The ancient Sanskrit epic, the Ramayana, composed over 2 millennia ago, describes a moment of divine engineering. It tells of an army of Vanaras, or forest beings, who built a massive bridge across this very sea under the guidance of the hero god Rama, to reach the island fortress of Lanka and rescue his wife Sita. The epic provides vivid details, stating the bridge was built by placing stones that floated because Rama's name was written upon them. This places Adam's bridge at a fascinating and often heated crossroads, where deep faith, ancient storytelling, and modern scientific inquiry meet. The core question that emerges from this intersection is not necessarily whether the entire structure was built by hand, but whether a natural geological feature could have been utilized, enhanced, or modified by human hands in a forgotten era. Could the epic preserve a collective memory of a time when people, perhaps using simple technology, created a causeway across these shallow waters by adding to or rearranging the existing stones? If so, it would represent a megalithic project of almost incomprehensible scale, spanning nearly 30 miles. The debate is layered. Mainstream geology points to the consistent composition and structure of the shoals as clear evidence of natural origins. Satellite imagery shows a continuous formation, a product of long-term coastal processes. Yet, some researchers and proponents point to anomalies, such as the unusual alignment of the shoals in a relatively straight path and the presence of what appear to be larger stone blocks sitting atop the sandy seafloor in sections. They ask if these could be the remnants of that enhancement, stones placed to make a natural sandbank more stable and traversable. The true power of Adam's bridge, however, may lie beyond the binary of natural versus human-made. It challenges us to expand our definition of what a megalith can be. Is it only a structure built entirely from scratch, or can a place where myth and geology become inseparably fused also be considered a monument? For countless generations, the physical geography has validated the story, and the story has given sacred meaning to the geography. It has become a cultural megalith, a landscape that carries the weight of a people's identity, history, and spiritual belief. Whether one sees a natural sandbar or the footprints of a god, the bridge stands as a powerful testament to the human need to see our deepest stories reflected in the world around us, to find narrative in the very shape of the earth. On the volcanic slopes of Tenerife, 6-stepped pyramids rise in stark geometric silence. The Pyramids of Güímar present a puzzle where the line between farm and temple blurs entirely. Built from lava stones without mortar, their clean, terraced forms were long dismissed by many scholars as mere majonos, stone piles cleared by 19th-century farmers to create planting terraces. They were seen as practical, accidental monuments, but in the 1990s, the adventurous ethnographer Thor Heyerdahl looked at these structures and saw something far more intentional. He noted their precise construction, with corners made from cut stone and leveled platforms, arguing they were too sophisticated to be simple agricultural refuse. His research pointed to the island's original inhabitants, the Guanches, a Berber-related people who lived in isolation for over a millennium before Spanish conquest. The Guanches had no written language, mummified their important individuals, and left behind a cultural legacy largely erased by colonization. Could these pyramids be one of their last silent testimonies? The most compelling evidence for a sacred purpose is written in the sky. During the summer solstice, if you stand on the platform of the largest pyramid, you can witness a double sunset. The sun dips behind a mountain peak, reappears in a saddle between slopes, and sets a second time. This precise alignment is not something a farmer stacking field stones would likely achieve by chance. It suggests an astronomical purpose, marking the longest day of the year for a culture that surely tracked the seasons for both practical and spiritual reasons. This transforms the pyramids from potential farmsteads into potential ritual stages, places where the community could gather to observe a celestial event that confirmed their place in the cosmic order. The debate around Güímar is a masterclass in archaeological humility. It forces us to ask, how do we distinguish a sacred space from a practical one when the builders cannot tell us themselves? Without a written record, we must read subtle clues in the stonework, the orientation, and the landscape. A farming terrace and a ceremonial platform can look remarkably similar, born from the same need to shape the earth. The difference may lie entirely in intention, a layer of meaning invisible to the eye. Perhaps the most profound interpretation is that they were both, a place where the practical act of cultivating life and the spiritual act of honoring the cycles that made life possible were one and the same. These enigmatic structures, therefore, stand as a dual monument. They are a testament to the complex society of the Guanches, capable of coordinated construction and sophisticated astronomical observation. And they are a quiet reminder that in the ancient world, the boundary between the daily work of survival and the sacred rituals that gave that work meaning was often seamlessly, beautifully thin. High in the Ural Mountains of Russia, the earth itself holds a secret sketchbook. Scattered across this rugged landscape are enormous figures, geoglyphs so vast their form dissolves into the terrain when you stand beside them. They are only revealed in their breathtaking entirety from the sky. The most famous of these is the Great Elk of Chronicle, a stone-lined figure stretching over 900 feet from antler tip to hoof. Constructed from carefully arranged bands of stone and soil, its elegant, stylized form depicts a powerful animal in motion, a creature of profound significance to the peoples of the northern forests. Unlike the famous Nazca lines in Peru, which were created by removing dark surface pebbles to reveal lighter soil beneath, these Russian geoglyphs are additive. They were built up stone by stone, a monumental act of placement rather than revelation. Dating these silent figures is a challenge, but preliminary estimates suggest they could be several thousand years old, the work of a prehistoric culture that left no other clear trace of its identity or beliefs. The construction itself is a quiet marvel of persistence. To create the moose, its makers gathered countless stones from the surrounding area, carrying and placing them to form lines roughly 10 feet wide, outlining the majestic animal. Over the millennia, soil and vegetation have filled in the spaces, but from above, the stone bands still define the figure with stunning clarity. This leads to the central, haunting question that hangs over the site. Why create art on a scale you can never truly see? The people who built this moose lived millennia before flight. The only vantage point from which to appreciate their work in full would have been a distant mountaintop, or perhaps, in their worldview, the eyes of the gods above. This intentional disconnect between maker and viewer adds a profound layer of mystery. Were these sprawling figures ritual landscapes, designed as sacred pathways for ceremonies performed within the outline of a powerful animal spirit? Could they have served as territorial markers for a clan, a symbol so large it claimed the land itself in a way that neighboring groups would understand? Some researchers look to the stars, wondering if the figures align with constellations important to their creators, turning the mountain plateau into a colossal map of the heavens. The purpose remains utterly cryptic, wrapped in the silence of a culture with no written record. In their silent, aerial grandeur, the Russian geoglyphs confront us with a possibility both humbling and awe-inspiring. Perhaps they were never meant for human eyes at all. Perhaps they were messages of devotion, respect, or identity intended for the sky itself, for the spirits of the animal world, or for the forces of nature that govern their lives. Or in a twist that connects them to every megalith we have explored, perhaps they were built with a quiet, hopeful intuition that someday, someone would ascend to a height they could not, and would look down and wonder. Beneath the quiet rice paddies and ponds of Zhejiang province in China, an entire hidden world waited. In 1992, local farmers decided to pump the water out of what they thought were 5 small, deep ponds in their village of Longyu. As the water level dropped, they did not find a muddy bottom. Instead, they revealed the entrance to an immense hand-carved cavern. This was not a natural cave. Its walls, ceiling, and massive support pillars were all meticulously shaped by human hands. Further exploration uncovered not 1, but 24 of these colossal subterranean halls, each one an architectural phantom with no name, no date, and no stated reason for existing. The sheer scale of the undertaking is almost incomprehensible. Carved into a thick layer of hard, red sandstone, the caves cover a total area of over 30,000 square meters. To put that in perspective, it is like excavating the rock equivalent of 10 modern football fields, all underground. The volume of stone removed is estimated at nearly 1 million cubic meters. If that rock were used to build a wall 1 meter wide and 1 meter tall, it would stretch from Beijing to Shanghai, a distance of over 1,000 kilometers. And this was all accomplished with simple iron chisels over 2,000 years ago by a culture that left us not a single written word about the project. Walking into one of these caverns today is an experience that defies expectation. The space is vast, often spanning thousands of square meters, with ceilings soaring over 30 meters high, the height of a 10-story building. But it is the details that truly mystify. Every single surface, from the walls to the enormous pillars left to support the ceiling, is covered in a uniform pattern of parallel chisel marks. These are not rough, haphazard gouges. They are consistent, evenly spaced, and run in the same direction across vast areas, a signature of staggering, systematic labor. The walls and pillars slope at precise, identical angles of 60 degrees. The ceilings are flat and level. Even more puzzling are the carved pools and channels found in some of the chambers, suggesting a careful management of water, perhaps from the very groundwater the farmers pumped out. This level of precision and coordination screams of a massive, state-sponsored endeavor. This was not the work of a local village digging a cellar. It required a master plan, advanced surveying skills to avoid collapsing into neighboring caves, a huge labor force that had to be fed and housed for years, and a method for disposing of an unimaginable mountain of rubble without leaving a trace on the surface. For what possible purpose would a society invest such monumental effort? The theories are as varied as they are speculative. Were they imperial tombs or ritual spaces, later stripped clean of all artifacts? Could they have been secret quarries providing the sandstone for a nearby city that has since vanished? Perhaps they were used for storage, a vast, temperature-stable granary or armory. Some have even suggested they were temporary shelters for a large population during a time of conflict, later abandoned and forgotten. Yet each theory crashes against the same silent wall. The Longyu Caves are a true blank slate. In a land with one of the world's richest and most continuous historical records, spanning thousands of years of meticulously kept annals, not a single scroll, edict, or poem mentions their construction. No tools, no pottery shards, no inscriptions, not even a charcoal smudge from an ancient torch has been found inside to give a clue. They were carved, used or not used, and then silently sealed by water and time, as if the memory of them was intentionally erased or never deemed important enough to write down. This complete absence of context is what makes them uniquely haunting. Most megaliths stand in the open, declaring their presence to the sky. The Longyu Caves are a secret kept by the earth itself, a monument to anonymity. They force us to confront a humbling possibility that an undertaking of such immense scale and sophistication could simply slip through the cracks of history, leaving only the echo of chisels in the dark as its only testament. This shared impulse to carve meaning into the earth, from the Scottish moors to the Pacific seafloor, speaks a silent language we are only now learning to hear. Across 20,000 years and every inhabited continent, cultures with no written record chose the same profound medium, stone, to send messages into the future. They were not in contact, they shared no grand plan, yet their actions reveal a constellation of universal human needs. They built to reach for the divine, creating stages like Göbekli, Tepe, or above Ġgantija, where community and cosmos could meet. They built to assert identity and power, as the Olmec heads and the walls of Great Zimbabwe so boldly declare. They built to honor those who came before, turning landscapes at Carnac, Rapa Nui, and the Plain of Jars into vast memorials. And with patient genius, they built to map the heavens, using alignments at Callanish and Almendres to track the sun and moon, weaving time itself into the fabric of their world. This monumental labor, repeated independently again and again, tells us something essential about ourselves. The drive to create something permanent, to say we were here and this is what we believed, is etched into our very nature. But this legacy also demands a shift in how we listen to history. Without written texts, we are forced to become detectives of a different kind. We must read the subtle grammar of architecture, the poetry of celestial alignment, the stories whispered by oral traditions passed down for hundreds of generations. These sites stand as a powerful correction to an old and persistent bias, the idea that true history and true complexity only began with the written word. They prove that spiritual depth, social organization, and breathtaking engineering are not the sole property of literate empires. A society can be profoundly sophisticated, can coordinate thousands of people across generations, can conceive of mathematical precision and astronomical cycles, all while preserving its knowledge in song, in ceremony, and in the deliberate placement of a stone. The silent language of these megaliths, therefore, is not one of absence but of a different kind of fullness. It invites us to expand our definition of a text, to see a standing stone as a paragraph, a stone circle as a chapter, and an entire ceremonial landscape as a volume in the great, unbound library of human experience. They challenge us to listen not for words but for meaning, written in the most enduring script we have ever known. From the dawn of civilization at Göbekli Tepe to the modern cryptic message of the Georgia Guidestones, these 20 sites form a single, unbroken story. It is the story of our shared human urge to reach beyond the fleeting moment, to carve a piece of our soul into the very bones of the planet. The builders of these places, from nomadic herders to settled farmers, from islanders to mountain dwellers, all chose the same patient medium, stone, to send a whisper into the future. Their specific prayers and names are lost, but the monuments they left behind shout of universal themes: ingenuity born from necessity, belief woven into landscape, and community forged through shared purpose. They prove that the drive to create, to commemorate, and to connect with forces greater than ourselves is not a product of advanced technology or written language, but a fundamental part of who we are. History, then, is not a book written only in ink. It is a library built in earth and rock, its shelves holding the silent, sturdy volumes of forgotten cultures. Each megalith is a page in that library, waiting for us to learn its unique grammar, to read the alignment of stones with stars, to understand the meaning behind a perfect sphere or a featureless face. This journey does not end here. It invites us to look at our own world with new eyes. What monuments are we building today, and what will they say about us to those who come after? What other secrets lie just beneath the surface of a familiar field, or in the depths of a local forest, waiting for a curious mind to uncover them and add a new chapter to this endless human story? We would love to hear which of these mysteries resonated most with you. Was it the celestial calendar of Callanish, the walking giants of Easter Island, or the submerged enigma of Yonaguni? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you are eager to continue unraveling the greatest enigmas of our world, subscribe to join us for the next discovery.